Movie remakes have been around for as long as there have been movies. The Great Train Robbery, which was done in 1903, met with huge success, so much so in fact that they decided to do a remake in 1904. As a Gen Xer, a lot of the movies that I really enjoyed watching growing up are now being remade. So this is the start of a new series on GenXGrownUp, where I'm going to take the original movie that I grew up with and compare it to the remake to decide really one question. Was that remake worth it? Or was it a case of diminishing returns?
Don't you know that you're a grown up? No games, no puns. Not a lot of you are grown up.
Hi, welcome to GenXGrownUp. My name is Mo, and I'm a GenXGrownUp. So they made a ton of remakes of 1980 movies. So many, in fact, that I'm not even going to bother trying to list them all. Instead, I am going to see if our amazing video editor, John, can maybe do some sort of ticker thing that goes across the bottom so you can look at it as I'm talking, and if I get boring, you can read it. Yeah, like that. Yeah, that's good. That's a little faster, though, would be better. That's too fast. Too fast. Slow it down, slow it down. Perfect. Yeah, just like that. Okay, great. So I'm going to use 3 criteria to determine whether or not this remake was really worth it. The first criteria is, was the remake better than the original? So to do that, I'm going to look at the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes to kind of keep it a little bit more objective than just my opinion. So the second criteria I'm going to use is how well it did in the box office versus how much it cost to produce. If something does worse in the box office than the original, then that's definitely a sign of a failure. So the last criteria I'm going to look at is, was this remake worth doing? You know, if they do the exact same storyline with different actors, then what's the point? So a good remake should take the story a little bit further, or maybe dive deeper into something that maybe was lacking in the first film. So here's something to think about. Of the top 15 movies that were made in the 1980s, only 3 do not have a sequel or a remake. Can you think of what 3 movies that is? I'll tell you at the end of this segment. So if I were to say wax on, wax off, would you know what movie I'm talking about? Odds are probably. Of course, the movie is The Karate Kid. The original Karate Kid came out in 1984 and starred Pat Morita and Ralph Macchio as the leading characters. The remake of The Karate Kid came out in 2010 and starred Jackie Chan and Jada Smith as the title characters. So looking at the basic story, I'm sure everyone here knows it. It's essentially just that, a kid is displaced from his home. He doesn't have a father. He's lost, can't make friends. And then he winds up forming a relationship with somebody who winds up teaching him karate. So before we get into reviewing the 2 movies, there's something I have to get off my chest. And that is the title of the remake just bugs me to no end. As a person who used to teach martial arts, I could tell you that Kung Fu and karate are 2 different things. They come from 2 different parts of Asia, even, or actually many different parts of Asia. And so to sit there and call this movie The Karate Kid because they figured that Americans wouldn't know the difference between one Asian culture and another is just insulting to me. Whoever made that decision in Hollywood, I would love to just walk up to you and kick you in the nuts, because that was the stupidest decision ever made. So calling that movie The Kung Fu Kid, I think would have been fine. I think especially seeing that Jackie Chan was in it, everyone associates Jackie Chan with Kung Fu. I don't see where any controversy would have come up from that. That's my rant, I'm done. So the first scene I want to look at is basically the teacher fight scene, right? That's one where either Pat Morita or Jackie Chan jumps in and saves their future student from getting beat up by the neighborhood bullies. Take a look at the 2. What can you say? Jackie Chan is the master of this. Although Pat Morita's one is pretty darn good too. His is a lot more direct, probably a little bit more realistic. Jackie Chan, what can you say? I enjoyed both of them. It's even hard to compare them because I think they're just 2 totally different things. The next scene is one that I thought was pretty pivotal in both movies, which is where they learn about the tragic background of their mentor. Pat Morita, you know that his one was, his wife and child died in an American concentration camp or internment camp, whatever you want to call it, whereas Jackie Chan's died in a car accident that he felt responsible for. Both very powerful scenes, so let's take a look.
Is this your wife? I don't know you were married.
Damn beautiful, don't you think? First American born Miyagi, waiting to be born. Miyagi, yes sir. Regret to inform wife, son, complication of birth, sir. Complication, but no doctor come.
We're not trained today.
What are you doing?
It's July 8th.
Two pretty powerful scenes. Don't have time to really show them in their entirety, but they're definitely really amazing scenes, I think, in both cases. I personally like the Pat Morita one better. It just seemed more tragic in a way, even though I know they both lost family and they're both tragic. But something about the idea that the reason why you lost your wife and child was that because you got sent off to fight in the war, they got sent to a internment camp, and they died there. Comparing those two, I gotta give this one to the first movie. So the next scene I selected is the one where both Ralph Macchio and Jada Smith are basically seeing something that they're able to somehow use at the end to win the fight. Yeah, a bit of a reach, but that's okay. One is obviously watching Pat Morita do the crane dance, the other one is watching the monk at the temple do the snake charming. So let's take a look at those. About that. Evidently whoever did the writing for the remake felt that this was a critical piece of the first movie, which it was, but they didn't feel like they wanted to do exactly the same thing, so they came up with something that was different. But this one, as soon as you saw the snake lady doing the thing with the snakes, you knew that's what he was going to do at the end of the movie because you saw the first one. Which is really one of the biggest problems, I think, with a lot of these remakes, is that there's no element of surprise anymore. Especially on some of the key components of a movie. If you get rid of those, then it's not a remake, it's something else. Again, it's one of those things where it's like you lose the surprise because it's a remake. So the next scene is the infamous sweep the leg, which now is almost taking on a connotation of cheat. Take a look at these two scenes. I mean, both of them, obviously this is a critical part of the movie because if he doesn't get injured somehow, then he can't make a miraculous comeback at the end. But let's take a look and see how it occurs.
But Sensei, I can beat this guy. I don't want him beaten. But I'll be disqualified.
Out of commission.
Sorry! Oh, sweetheart! My leg is hurt!
Miyagi here?
My leg.
And this, okay.
Empty your mind. Focus.
Two very similar scenes again. Is it just me, or from the first Karate Kid, the guy with the hair thing there, is that bug anybody else but me? I don't know. It just bothered me. Even back then, I remember seeing it thinking that's the stupidest looking haircut I ever saw because it looked like he's wearing a toupee or something. But okay, anyway, I digress. As far as the acting, I kind of have to give it to the second one. Not to Jada Smith's performance, but more to the performance of the actor that actually damaged his knee. The first one, the guy's yelling, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, we get it. The second one, you just look at his face and you saw that he felt horrible about it. So I gotta give him props for that. So let's take a look at some numbers. The original Karate Kid in today's dollars would have cost about $19 million to produce. And it generated $214 in gross revenue. So 214 million, so that's about 11 times, a little over 11 times your return on investment, which isn't bad. The remake would have cost about $45 million to make today and generated about $197 million domestically, which is about 4.3 times return on investment. Doesn't seem like it's a good comparison, does it? But there's one thing we have to factor is that this is Jackie Chan we're talking about. His movies have appeal all over the place. So if you look at worldwide numbers, not just domestic numbers, then the sequel actually would have generated $384 million in revenue. So you're looking at about an 8.5 times return on investment. Still not as good as the first one, but nothing to sneeze at either. Let's take a look at the Rotten Tomato ratings to see how well these movies were received. The original Karate Kid had a Rotten Tomato rating of 88, which is pretty darn good. The remake had a rating of 65, which is respectable, but not nearly an 88. So it seems like from a population standpoint that the first one definitely kicked the second one's butt. Now we're to the point where we have to determine, was the juice worth the squeeze on this? Was this a remake worth doing? If you're a movie producer, you're looking at some straight dollars, absolutely. This movie made about $300 million, mostly due to its worldwide distribution, whereas the original Karate Kid would have made about $180 million today. But, to be honest, my answer still is going to be no. I don't think this was a remake worth doing. As much as I love Jackie Chan, it basically retold the exact same story. There was no surprise in it at all. Like, there was nothing in it to make it original other than you wanted to see, I want to see the Jackie Chan fight scene versus this fight scene. I want to see the fight scenes at the end versus the fight scenes here. But that was pretty much it. Everything else pretty much followed the same movie exactly. In my opinion, I think definitely not worth doing the remake. Although, I have to admit, I still enjoyed the movie. If this movie had never come out, I would not be thinking, oh my god, we need to do a Karate Kid remake. Why haven't they done it yet? Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up. I assume that if you're still here, you're either a relative, you left your player on, or you really enjoyed it. Hopefully, if you're one of the two of those three, please share us on whatever social media you use. And I'd love to hear what you think. If you have any other ideas for movies that we can maybe cover, or, your thoughts on this one. This is just my opinion. I could be wrong. So thanks again for joining us, everyone. Take care.
Don't you know that you're a
Whoa, stop the credits, Sorry, I forgot. I'm supposed to answer that question that I posed earlier in the video, which was, of the top 15 grossing movies of the 1980s, which 3 did not have a sequel or a remake done of them? The answer to that question is E.T., Tootsie, and Rain Man. Those are the only 3 of the top 15 movies made in the 1980s that did not have a remake, or a sequel, I should say. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt the end credits there. You can do them again. Okay, got it? Go.
Don't you know that you're a grown-up? No games, no puns. Not allowed if you're a grown-up. No more watching shows till sunrise. Unacceptable for grown-ups. Your dinner cannot just be french fries. Basically, life sucks as a grown-up.